Next, from Springfield, we talk to Dalitso Sulamoyo, President and CEO of the Illinois Association of Community Action Agencies, about how the state's budget crisis could cause a suspension in funding for the next fiscal year for the Low-Income Home Energy Assistance Program and the effects on those who rely on the program. This runs about 10 minutes.
Dalitso Sulamoyo, thank you for joining us here on the Illinois channel. You run the Liheap program, which helps thousands of low-income households pay for their utility costs, heating in the winter, and even air conditioning in the summer. Now, the program has been caught in the middle of budget negotiations, and the state might suspend the program for the next fiscal year. Can you tell us how that might affect the clients that you serve?
Absolutely. So, one of the things I'd like to point out is that the Liheap program in Illinois is funded both by state funding as well as federal funding. One of the things to point out is that we ran out of federal funding and state funding as far back as March. So we have thousands of households right now that have been disconnected from their utilities. And with this suspension being put in place, that means that we won't be able to assist these households until perhaps November, when we have received federal funding. If we don't have the state-funded portion of the program, that will impact anywhere between 130 and 150,000 households that will not be able to get any assistance because the federal funding alone is not adequate to serve the eligible population in this program.
And how many exactly does the Liheap program serve in total?
So in total, with the federal funding, based on last year's performance, was about 420,000 households, not people, but households. So the state-funded portion represents about a third of the total program, and the federal portion is obviously 2/3.
Okay, and what is the eligibility requirements to be a part of the program?
So we serve, families that are living on 150% of poverty or below. If we take 150% of poverty and look at a family of four, that's a family that's living on about $35,000, $36,000 a year income. So again, it's anywhere from no income all the way up to 150% of poverty. So we're really serving people who are really struggling. We have families who are working but living in poverty. So Liheap, really helps them to not fall deeper into poverty, but hopefully climb out of poverty. We also serve a lot of seniors who are on fixed income. These are individuals who have contributed to society, are retired, are living on fixed income, and Liheap helps them to be able to afford other necessities in their lives, be it, medication or food or, clothing and other necessities. But we also serve, households that have people who have disabilities. They are also living on fixed income, and Liheap goes a long way to help them stay in their home, be independent, and not lose their homes. So it's very important for us to maintain the state funding because the whole purpose of having the state funding was to supplement the federal funding because the federal funding alone is not adequate. If we look at how many of the eligible households we serve with both sources of funding, our numbers tell us that it's about 38%, which means you have 62% that we're not able to serve because the funds are not adequate. If you remove the state funding out of the equation, then we're going to drop down to close to 24, if not less than that, percent of the eligible population that we serve, which will mean that we will have hundreds and thousands of households, besides those that we've been able to serve with state funding, but those that we have also not been able to serve that will not get any assistance. And God forbid we have a hot summer this year with those households that have been disconnected and with no federal funding in place until November. It will be tragic for many of those households.
With such a large population that's not even eligible to enter into the program, what do you think is going on here? Why is the state talking about suspending it?
Well, I'm not really sure what the idea there is, but the way we're looking at it is that, the participating utilities that collect the surcharge will continue to collect that surcharge throughout the year. So from our perspective, those funds will be there. These are not funds that are out of the general revenue fund. This is a special fund that was created specifically for the purpose of serving, low-income households with Liheap benefits. And so I think it would be a different story if the program was funded out of the general revenue fund. But the funds will still be collected. And so, we're hopeful that there will be some agreement reached between now and before July 1st so that we can get back to the business of assisting these families.
So let's get this clear. You're saying that the funds will still be collected even though the Liheap program might be suspended?
Correct. I mean, the utilities that collect that assess the surcharge on their customers do so because of the statute that's in place, the Illinois Energy Assistance Act, which directs them to assess that surcharge both on their residential customers as well as on their commercial and industrial customers. Until that statute is amended to tell them otherwise, they will continue to assess that surcharge.
Dalitso, do you have any idea where those funds might go if this program is suspended?
I really don't have any idea. I'm hopeful again that those funds will not be redirected into the general revenue fund for other purposes, but that the funds will be used strictly for Liheap.
Okay. Earlier, I can't say earlier, but a few months ago, we, the Illinois Channel, did interview one of the recipients. His name was James Lewis, and it seemed like he was so grateful for this program, and it seems like it would be very unfortunate if the state of Illinois did cut the program.
It would be, and we have been collecting stories from all over the state, and those stories have been coming in, particularly since the suspension was announced. And these are gut-wrenching stories of everyone from, veterans that have served this country to, seniors, households that have children with severe disabilities that will be impacted if these funds are not going to be available. And as I pointed out, federal funding alone will not be adequate to serve the population. We've looked at numbers that show that for households that live anywhere from 0% to 150% of poverty in Illinois, based on last year's numbers, it was about 1.1 million households. And with both federal and state funding, we only served close to 420,000 households, which means that we still have a great need for this program. And so removing the state funding from the program is just going to set us back.
What's next, Dalitso, for the Liheap program? I know that you have a testimony in Chicago on Thursday.
Well, we're the advocates for the program. I mean, our job is to provide information to not only the members of the General Assembly, but also the governor's office that shows what the impact will be if these funds are not going to be available for the program. I believe that is what our task and job is, and that's what we're doing. We're showing the numbers, we're sharing the stories, and we're asking that this suspension be lifted so that July 1st we should be running the program. I think that maybe the situation would have been slightly different, not a whole lot, but slightly different if we had federal funding, but we don't. So we are in a worse off situation than we have been in many, many years. So, without the state funding, we will not be able to start serving families until when we get federal funding, which could be in November. So I would like for your listeners or your viewers to think about households that don't have utilities right now, going through the summer and up to November, if not later, without any utilities being connected. How challenging and tragic that will be for those households.
Right, and by November, it'll already be cold.
If today, I think the high I saw today is estimated to be 90 degrees, think about being in a home that has no air conditioning, how uncomfortable that will be. Think about an individual who is maybe on a ventilator, that has severe disabilities, and if their utilities have been cut off, think about them. Think about, that senior who has contributed to this society and they're living on fixed income, and now they're in a home with no utilities. Think about a household that has children under the age of 6 They cannot take a warm bath, cannot refrigerate their food. We're putting these families at risk. We hope that this suspension will be lifted.
Yes, you bring up a good point. It's a health issue.
It is a health and safety issue because even in the wintertime, if these households don't have utilities, sometimes they will resort to dangerous methods of keeping themselves warm, such as, it could be if they rely on gas to heat their home, they may be turning their stoves on to warm up the home. And sometimes these methods have resorted to some dangerous outcomes where homes have been set ablaze or on fire. So we don't want to put our families at risk. We need to be more compassionate about these households. We are a state that experiences some very extreme weather conditions, and that is why we're one of 24 states in the country that has state-funded Liheap.
Dalitso, is there anything else that you'd like to add to this discussion?
Again, I would appeal to everyone involved, and particularly to our governor, to reconsider the suspension, that this funding, it may just be $165 million, but that $165 million goes to assist over 130,000 households in our state. And we would appeal to him that this suspension needs to be lifted because we have no money right now, and we need those state funds to begin to serve families.
All right. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.